we are, cruising along the highway in the big 300. Pretty quiet inside here. Heading out on a bit of a western road towards a town called Millmerran, and the road heading out this way in spots isn't the best road. I thought it might be a good place to test it because you'll get different little bumps, you'll get really smooth bits of bitumen. So poking along here, I'm doing dead on 100k an hour. It's not like the 200 in this respect. The 200 is hunting gears. You know, it'll go 5th to 6th to 5th. You know, you really got to be doing 100. You got to be speeding in the 200. You got to be doing probably 120 to hold it in 6th gear properly. But this 300, it's very cool. It's sitting at maybe 1400 RPM, dead on 100. So it must be in top gear. It's quiet enough. Not quite as quiet as a 200 inside. A few little things that have been irking me. Now, the back seats rattle, and this front seat here, it seems to move up and down and does a couple of weird things as well. Hopefully it's just this particular vehicle and not all 300s are like this. But so far, it's nice, it drives nice. The only thing that is probably my biggest upset is the road noise is slightly louder than the 200. It's noticeably louder. I don't believe that this particular vehicle, being a Sahara ZX, top of the line Sahara you can get, like it's a higher spec vehicle than my current Sahara in the 200, it actually doesn't handle as well as the 200. Now, I put that down to the 200 having KDSS suspension, so hydraulically assisted sway bar system, and they work fabulously. When you're going into a tight corner, you know, and it tightens up a fair bit and you just steer into it, the 200 stays flat. Where this 300, it body rolls in there. So for me, that's a major upset in my opinion. I think they should have had the KDSS system on the VX, the same as what it was on the 200, up. Not just the GR Sport, because it really changes the handling characteristics of the vehicle. That's one thing I think Toyota should give themselves an uppercut for, when I think it's money saving, in my opinion. Let's get down to the engine. Now, plenty of power, accelerates unbelievably. Now, I don't put that down to the V6 engine at all. The V8 of the 200 was fabulous. In my opinion, this engine looks very similar. It looks, you know, obviously it probably isn't, but it looks like they've just chopped 2 cylinders off the V8 engine, and that is what's given you the V6. Now, they would give you more fuel, they would give you more turbo boost, they'd give you a better electronics map in the computer system, and that's going to give you the power that shows extra over and above the V8. But as we know, the Land Cruiser 200 V8, you can tune those things and they can have phenomenal power, minimal expense to do that. Where the 200 gets let down, in my opinion, is the gearbox. The 6-speed box has never been tuned right for Australian conditions. They like to hold in 5th more than going into 6th gear, like I said, 120k an hour. Where this 300, the 10-speed box, is what makes this car. It keeps all the power in the correct rev range. Like, all the torque, I should say, is transferred through the correct gear, and it just keeps it really on song. So, I'll tell you what, Toyota, you have absolutely nailed the gearbox in this car. Phenomenal. I believe, see, I don't know if you can see this, but we're just hitting a few bumps and we're doing a few wobbles. I don't know if you can hear the seats rattling. Hopefully you can pick up the seats rattling. Real big disappointment, I reckon that is. Anyway, I digress. Toyota, you have absolutely nailed the gearbox. An 8 out of 10 for me, that gearbox. Maybe a 9 out of 10, where the 200 was, you know, a 5 out of 10. Now, the chassis on these 300s, bit of a shame. Toyota has gone for weight reduction. The chassis on this particular car, they've shrunk it, you know, maybe by 5%. And then it gets us onto the diff housing. The diff housings are smaller as well. Roughly, you know, maybe 5% smaller than its previous on the 200. So that means maybe the axles are going to be smaller on the 300. I mean, the struts are shorter on the front. There's all sorts of things that they look the same, but they're just that little bit different. Now, the rear diff suspension geometry on the 300s, they've brought the springs internally inside the chassis, but then they've got the shock absorbers on the outside, and they've got the tiniest of tiny sway bars on the rear, and on the front you've got this big monstrous sway bar. Now, when you're putting it into corners, this thing skips. It feels unnerving in the back, where the 200, you know, a KDSS version of the 200 in this spec, it just stuck to the road, you know. So the small sway bar, the change of the geometry and the positioning of the suspension on the 300, I think has changed that. It's okay doing what we're doing now, but as soon as I start putting it into the twisties and all that sort of stuff, and you get a bit of rough road, it does the big skip, which is a bit of a shame. I've taken this thing four-wheel driving. Now, off-road, I didn't expect this 300 to be as capable as it is. Without even using the crawl control or the multi-terrain system, this thing climbs everywhere. Now, on the back, it's got a big sticker on the rear diff. It says LSD, limited slip differential. Now, the 200, it relied upon the electronics, and it grabbed the brakes, and it used to do the click-clack. Now, this doesn't sound like it does the click-clacks and the brakes going on and off. I don't know what they've done. I'm going to have to do some more research here so I can give you the facts. But all I can say is I think they've improved the off-road ability of the 300. Now, the 200 was fantastic. Where I took this vehicle four-wheel driving, the 200 has driven all the same terrain multiple times, and it's no worries in standard trim. The 200 has got better clearance. It's got a better approach angle. It's got a better departure angle. You know, when you're talking Saharas versus Saharas. This particular Sahara has got an extra maybe 100mm to 125mm in the front bumper bar grille assembly. It hangs down really low. Now, I've done substantial damage to that bottom area just trying to get the approach right, and you've just got no choice. You've got to scrape that front bar to get that front tyre onto the terrain that you're driving on. Yeah, so it's a bit of a shame, done that damage, but you know, we had to find out how capable this is, and it's on 20-inch rims. You know, it's got lower profile tyres than the other models. I put them down to 18 psi. Yeah. Now, when I used the multi-terrain system, I went up a rock ledge, and it did its, not a click-clack style, because it just doesn't do that, but you can feel it going up, like applying the power and doing whatever else like that. And yeah, it worked really well. I put it on rock mode for that particular one. Yeah, works superbly. Now, I've used the crawl control, I've used it for descending, and I've used it for you know, going up the hill. It works well too. But you know, sometimes you used to think, well, I'll just put it in crawl control to do that, or whatever else on the 200, because it might do it a bit better than you driving it. Where this particular car, if you drive it, it seems to go everywhere anyway. It's like it's front and rear locked. It's really, really a game changer. Whatever they've done here, I think once you put some bigger tyres on it and give it a lift and all that sort of stuff, put a bull bar so your approach angle's better, you know, and maybe do something with that rear bar, because I've torn it off as well. Yeah, if you could get that departure angle and approach angle sorted out, bigger tyres, these things are going to be an absolute weapon off-road. Absolute weapon off-road. On my driveway, I have got these water diversion woo boys, I call them. Now, I hit one of those at speed. I check it out, how the car reacts with it, and the car gets airborne. Well, we're going to be launching this thing. There's this hump on the driveway. We'll just check the suspension out, see what it's like with the 300. And yeah, hopefully we'll get a bit of air and see how it handles. Tip her in. I thought this was going to get squirrely because, like I said, it gets a bit towy in the back end and it sort of skips around. But going over that, it really did well. It really did well. So that's a bonus. When if you hit some terrain that you've not looked out for, like if you're driving along the beach at Fraser Island or something like that, you know, you get those little water washouts. So if you happen to hit one of those and you know you didn't see it and you're carrying a bit of speed, I believe that the car would handle that okay. So that's a plus for the 300. I mean, it probably doesn't handle it quite as good as a 200 with the KDSS, but you know, it handled it nonetheless better than I expected. Well, how are we? Tell you what, the boot space in this 300 is bigger than some people's living quarters around the world. It's quite impressive how much room you've got in the 300 boot. Now, the 200 one is slightly smaller. I don't know the exact dimensions, but I can tell you when I sit in the back of a 200 one like that, I can't stretch out as comfortable as I am right now. Well, while I'm here, let's talk about carrying capacity of the 300. Now, this is a Sahara ZX. It's got a slightly different load capacity. It's got some trusty spec sheets here. So this particular car can carry 670 kilos. So the curb weight for this one, they are telling us that they're 2610. When I put this over the weighbridge, it came in at 2580. So not sure about that. I mean, that's probably a bit of fuel or whatever else. But yeah, it was a little bit lighter than what they're saying. Now, the Sahara ZX that I'm testing as well, it's a little bit longer than the other cars. It's 5 meters 15 and all the rest of them are 49.80 except for the GR Sport, which is 49.95. Now, talking about the load again, the GX, it is up from the GX on the 200. So load carrying capacity on a 200 for a GX is 710 kilos, and for these it's 785. So it's up in the right direction, isn't it, for carrying the weight. The GXL is 700 kilos. The GXL on a 200 is 610. So there's a 90 kg improvement there. And on the VX on the 300 it's 650 kilos. The Sahara at 650 kilos. Now, the GXL, VX and Sahara are all 7-seaters. So I gather that the Sahara ZX, it doesn't have the extra seats, so that weight changes. So there's 670 kgs you can carry in these, and then back to the GR Sport, it's 650 kilos. So they all range in weight. For a GX is 24.95. For the GXL, it's 25.80. 26.30 for a VX, 26.30 for a Sahara, and then it drops down to the Sahara ZX, which is 26.10, and then it goes back up for the GR Sport to 26.30. So look, there's some rough specs of these, but you know, they're a little bit lighter car. I would have expected that the actual GVM would be higher. Now, the GVM on a 200 is 3350. The GVM on a 300 is 3280, and that's down on the 200 at 3350. So, considering that you're really, the best you're going to get is 700 odd kilos, you know, it's pretty sad. So, back to having to do GVMs on these 300s as well. We're going to try and do the roughly 4 tonne and the 4.5 tonne again. So that's going to be a big plus for the people out there who are buying the wagons and they need to, you know, fill them full of stuff and go down the road legally. Because by the time you put 350 kgs of ball weight when you're towing a 3.5 tonne trailer and a couple of people in the car,
you really don't have much room for anything else, and that's the sad bit. Like if you had full 5 people in this particular car, or you had full 7 people in the other vehicles, the other models, you're going to be way overweight just by towing a 3.5 ton trailer. So Toyota, when are you guys going to give yourselves an uppercut and actually give people a decent GVM from factory? Well, in these 300s, it is pretty flash inside, I must admit. I mean, obviously this is the Sahara ZX, but even the standard ones that I've seen are pretty nice as well. Like a few little features. See the old center console lid, so that's pretty handy. Phone, this is obviously in the higher spec ones. You've got automatic charger here that the phone just slots onto. I mean, how good's that? Keeps it all nice and flush. You can see it. Fancy gear changing stick. But it's functional, it's quite nice to use. Now here, you've got the handbrake little switch here, right? But you don't need to use it, because when you put this in park, it automatically puts the handbrake on. And then when you pull this back into reverse or drive or whatever else, it automatically takes the handbrake off. So you can change that in the settings, I'm pretty sure. So if you're a little bit nervous, you've got young children or whatever else, and they, you know, you jump out to open a gate or something like that, and you put it in park, and the kids jump in it and, you know, lean over or do whatever, and they pull it into gear. I mean, that's the last thing you need, isn't it? So if that's the case, you can get into the functions here and then change that. So that's pretty cool. Now, your high 4 and low 4 button is very, very simple to use here. All you do is you press it down and clip it back into low 4. That's easy. And obviously, with these, it's the same as the 200. You just got the center diff lock. So that's what really engages the 4-wheel drive, when you flick that center diff lock, and then that becomes high 4, and then you can obviously change to low 4. You still got your turning circle button here. In all the 4-wheel driving I've done in 200s, I've never used that function. So maybe some people out there who have used that function, can you comment below and actually tell us, you know, does it actually help you and work? Because yeah, I've always been interested in that. I've just never used it. So you come over to here to mode select. Now when you're not in 4-wheel drive, that'll give you some basic settings. It'll have economy, sport, sport plus, and it's got a custom mode, and I think there's one other one in there. When you flick it to, you've got an MTS, so multi-terrain selection, that then changes it to mud, rock, sand, all that type of stuff. And then obviously you've got the crawl control. When I used that crawl control, when I was getting up that really nasty sandstone sort of lip that was really, really off camber, it actually works really, really well. It is different to the 200 one there, where the 200 one does the click-clacky stuff. This one actually doesn't make those sorts of noises. It just sort of creeps along and all that sort of jazz. So I really think that's electronically controlled somehow. It is obviously using the brakes, but it's not doing the really loud click-clack stuff like the 200 does. Let's get onto some of these other settings here, other buttons I should say. I mean, it's quite easy to use when you're driving down the road, like your volume controls here like this. Obviously you can turn your screen infotainment on and off, map, menu, audio, home, setup, and then obviously your seek and track. It's very, very simple, simply laid out and easy to use, I must admit. And then you've got your fan controls, temperature controls, and all that sort of jazz here. And like you've got your front demister, rear demister, you put it on auto, and then you've got a big off button here as well, so you can turn all that off. The best thing about the higher spec ones, you've got heated and cooled seats. Now, or you can put it on auto, you can put it on hot. You've got 3 settings there, but the cooled seats are amazing. There's all these little holes, vent holes, and it's, yeah, you put it right down low, and oh, hot day, amazing, amazing. And obviously you've got your heated steering wheel, which here in Australia, you know, obviously down south in the snow and all that sort of stuff, that might come in handy, but for where we are in Queensland, I highly doubt that I'm going to be using that anytime soon, the heated steering wheel. But hey, it's a great thing to have. Over here on the steering wheel, you've got some, you know, easily laid out buttons. It is quite simple to use. Obviously you've got your back button here, you've got your phone answer on off, you've got your selects of these different other modes, and then your volume control. Now you've got this button up here, it is for your adaptive cruise control. It actually works out what distance you want to be following the car behind. Now, this trusty button over here to the right is your lane assist button. That is my nemesis in this 300. As soon as I start this car, I turn that off. Because as soon as you get near a white line or whatever else, it is way oversensitive. And I've looked in the book, I've spoken to the dealer, that is one button you can't change. You've got to turn it off or leave it on. And I think it's dangerous, this button. It is too sensitive. Or maybe I'm just wrong and the dealer I've been talking to is wrong and doesn't quite know yet. But hey, if someone knows better than me and you can actually adjust how sensitive that button is, can you please comment below, because I want to know. That there, yeah, like I said, my nemesis. I'm very disappointed with how that is that sensitive. Now, there's obviously a cruise control button to turn it on. It's a little bit difficult to get to as well, I reckon, until you really know the layout. You've got to look at the steering wheel and go, okay, that's the button. Now, on this side, they've got it right though. They've got set and resume on that button there. So when you're cruising along, you can actually feel it. And you know, you want a bit more speed, you click her up and down. So you don't actually have to look where you're looking, like the volume control. And obviously you've got your cancel button over here, and you've got some mode buttons to go through different things on your dash as well. But that's just a rough little layout of the Sahara ZX steering wheel. Toyota's really stepped up the interior in my opinion. But when we're talking about the interior, my gripes are seats move. You know, they rattle around, the rear seats rattle. I don't know if you can see that, but that is terrible. Those sorts of things I would expect better out of Toyota. The 200 one does not rattle. The interior in the 200 doesn't rattle. Well, I'm now in the back of the 300. Now, that's fairly way back, because obviously I've turned the car off and the seat slides back. So if you're quite tall, I mean, I'm stretching my legs out. When I'm short, it's comfy. It's all right. It's all right. Yeah, it's okay. I mean, you got a bit of recline there. That's not hugely comfy with the way it pivots there. I think the 200 one pivots down a bit lower. It's not quite as uncomfortable as that, but look, it's not bad. I'll show you what I mean about these seats. So I don't know if you can see that or hear it. When you're going around the gravel road, that's what they do. It drives me mad. Come on, Toyota, you can be better than this. Absolutely. The money we pay, you get this. Anyway, that's a bit of a rundown in the back of the car. You know, it is what it is. Well, all I can say, folks, is make sure you click the like button and subscribe to our channel, because we're going to be releasing a massive amount of videos in a series about this 300. We're going to be doing mods to this car, and best of all, we're going to be chopping this thing clean in half and making it a dual cab ute. So stay tuned to this channel, because there's going to be some epic stuff happening with the 300.